Deep in the steamy lowlands of southern Mexico, hidden beneath centuries of jungle growth, lies evidence of Mesoamerica's first great civilization, the Olmec. A culture so advanced, so mysterious, that archaeologists still debate how they achieved what they did over 3,000 years ago. Around 1200 BCE, when most of the world was still learning to work bronze, the Olmec were creating massive stone monuments, establishing complex trade networks, and laying the cultural foundation for every civilization that would follow in Mesoamerica. The Maya, the Aztecs, even the ball game still played today, all trace their roots back to these mysterious people. But here's what makes them truly remarkable. The Olmec appeared seemingly out of nowhere. No gradual development, no obvious predecessors, just suddenly, boom! Monumental architecture, sophisticated art, and a social organization that would influence cultures for the next 2,000 years. The Olmec Heartland covered about 7,000 square miles along Mexico's Gulf Coast, in what's now the states of Veracruz and Tabasco. This wasn't exactly prime real estate. The region floods regularly, it's sweltering hot, mosquitoes are everywhere. But it had something the Olmec needed: rich river valleys, perfect for farming, and access to the Gulf of Mexico for trade. The major Olmec centers were San Lorenzo, La Venta, Tres Zapotes, and Laguna de los Cerros. San Lorenzo was the earliest major site, thriving from around 1200 to 900 BCE. This place was massive, a deliberately constructed plateau rising about 160 feet above the surrounding floodplain. Think about that. They literally built a mountain. La Venta came next, flourishing from about 900 to 400 BCE. This became the ceremonial heart of Olmec culture, featuring the first pyramid in Mesoamerica, a fluted cone structure that stood over 100 feet tall. These weren't just cities, they were statements of power, engineering marvels designed to impress and intimidate. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, or rather the massive stone heads. The Olmec colossal heads are unlike anything else in the ancient world. We found 17 of them so far. Each one weighs between 6 and 50 tons. That's up to 100,000 pounds of solid basalt rock. Here's the kicker. The stone didn't come from anywhere near the cities. The Olmec hauled these boulders from the Tuxtla Mountains, over 60 miles away, through swamps, rivers, and jungle, without wheels, without draft animals, just raw human power, log rollers, and an insane amount of determination. Each head is unique. They show distinct facial features: broad noses, thick lips, almond-shaped eyes. Some archaeologists think they're portraits of specific rulers. Each wears a distinctive helmet, possibly used for playing the ceremonial ball game or as symbols of authority. The level of detail is incredible. We're talking about expressions, individualized features, even what looks like straps and padding on the helmets. 10 colossal heads were found at San Lorenzo alone, arranged in rows like a procession of ancient kings. Imagine walking through that city as a visitor, these massive stone faces staring down at you, each one representing power that could move mountains. Literally, the colossal heads are just the tip of the iceberg. The Olmec were master engineers. At San Lorenzo, archaeologists discovered sophisticated drainage systems made from carefully fitted basalt columns. These weren't simple ditches. They were carved stone pipes that controlled water flow across the artificial plateau. Some theories suggest they might have even created decorative water features, like fountains. The construction of these cities required serious organizational skills. We're talking about moving millions of tons of earth to create platforms and pyramids. Leventis Pyramid alone required hundreds of thousands of cubic feet of earth, all moved by hand. But here's what really gets archaeologists excited: the precision. Many Olmec structures are aligned to cardinal directions. Their plazas form perfect rectangles. This wasn't accidental. They had mathematical and astronomical knowledge that allowed them to plan and execute massive construction projects with remarkable accuracy. The Olmec also created what might be the earliest concrete in the Americas, a mixture of lime and sand used in floors and structures. They shaped massive stone columns, carved intricate altars, and created elaborate mosaic pavements from serpentine blocks. Did the Olmec have writing? This is one of archaeology's hottest debates. In 1999, a stone block with symbols carved on it was found near the Olmec area, dated to around 900 BCE. Some researchers call it the Colossal block, and they believe it shows an early writing system, 62 distinct symbols arranged in sequences. But here's the problem. We can't read it. We don't know if these symbols represent words, ideas, or something else entirely. Some scholars argue it's not writing at all, just decorative symbols. Others think it's proof that the Olmec invented the first writing system in the Americas, predating Maya hieroglyphs by centuries. What we do know is that Olmec art is loaded with symbolism. The jaguar appears constantly, combined with human features to create were-jaguar figures. Archaeologists think the jaguar represented power, the underworld, or shamanic transformation. The Olmec also depicted serpents, eagles, and sharks, each carrying specific meanings we're still trying to decode. One symbol shows up everywhere, a distinctive mark that looks like a cleft or indentation. It appears on the foreheads of figures, on monuments, even shaped at the pyramid at La Venta. Some think it represents a cleft in the sacred mountain from which maize, the staff of life, first emerged in Mesoamerican mythology. The Olmec established an artistic vocabulary that would influence every culture that followed. The feathered serpent? That started with the Olmec. The ball game? Olmec. The concept of ritual bloodletting? You guessed it, Olmec. The Olmec didn't just build cities. They built an economic empire. Their trade networks stretched across Mesoamerica and beyond, reaching as far as modern-day Guatemala, central Mexico, and possibly even the southern United States. Why trade? Because the Olmec heartland lacked crucial resources. No obsidian for sharp tools, no jade for prestigious ornaments, and no quality stone for monuments besides what they could get from the Tuxtla Mountains. So they traded. Obsidian came from Guatemala and central Mexico. We know this because archaeologists can trace the chemical signature of obsidian back to specific volcanic sources. The Olmec used it for everything: knives, scrapers, projectile points. Between 1800 and 800 BCE, obsidian trade at San Lorenzo was already well established and sophisticated. Jade was even more valuable. The Olmec prized it above gold. They carved it into axes, figurines, and ornaments. The jade came from Guatemala's Motagua River Valley, over 600 miles away. Moving these precious stones required organized trade routes, trusted merchants, and probably armed escorts. What did the Olmec trade in return? We think they exported rubber. They lived in rubber tree territory. Salt from coastal areas, cacao for chocolate, pottery, and possibly finished stone goods. The Olmec had access to the Gulf Coast, which meant they could move goods by water, a huge advantage. These trade routes weren't just about economics, they were cultural highways. Olmec religious ideas, artistic styles, and social practices spread along with the goods, influencing cultures across Mesoamerica. Olmec religion was complex and, frankly, sometimes terrifying. Their art shows scenes of shamanic transformation, human sacrifice, and rituals involving bloodletting. This wasn't a peaceful, New Age spirituality. This was religion as raw power. The Olmec appeared to have believed in a layered universe, the heavens above, the earthly realm, and the underworld below. Caves were sacred, entrances to the underworld where rulers could communicate with ancestors and supernatural forces. Several Olmec sites feature artificial caves or cave paintings. Bloodletting was crucial. Rulers would pierce their tongues, ears, or genitals with stingery spines or obsidian blades, letting blood flow onto bark paper that would then be burned. Why? Because in Mesoamerican thought, blood was sacred, the ultimate offering to the gods. This practice would continue through the Maya and Aztec civilizations. The ceremonial ball game was another key ritual. We found ball courts at several Olmec sites. The game had deep religious significance. It represented the movement of celestial bodies, the struggle between light and darkness, life and death. Some games likely ended in human sacrifice, with captive players paying the ultimate price. Stone altars, though they were probably thrones, show rulers emerging from cave-like openings, emphasizing their role as intermediaries between the human and supernatural worlds. The message was clear. Olmec rulers weren't just political leaders. They were shamans, priests, and living connections to the divine. So what was it like to actually live in an Olmec city? Well, it depended on who you were. Olmec society was highly stratified. Basically, a small elite ruling over a large population of commoners. At the top sat the rulers, the guys whose faces might be those colossal heads. They controlled land, resources, and religious knowledge. Below them came the nobles, priests, and skilled artisans. These people lived in better houses, ate better food, and had access to luxury goods like jade ornaments and elaborate pottery. Then came the commoners, the farmers, laborers, and craftspeople who made up most of the population. They lived in simple houses made from wood and thatch, raised crops, and provided the labor that built those monuments. Their diet was actually pretty good. They had access to fish, shellfish, turtles, and birds from the coastal wetlands. They grew avocados, sunflowers, and possibly cotton. And yes, they had chocolate. The Olmec were among the first to cultivate cacao, making a bitter drink that was probably reserved for elites and ceremonial occasions. Women likely played important roles, especially in household production and possibly in religious rituals. Some Olmec figurines show women in positions of authority, though we don't know if this reflects reality or mythology. Children grew up learning their parents' trades. If your father was a farmer, you'd become a farmer. If he was a stone carver, you'd learn to carve. Social mobility was probably limited, though exceptional skill or favor from a ruler might offer opportunities. The Olmec didn't just influence Mesoamerica, they defined it. Their artistic styles, religious concepts, and cultural practices spread across the region like ripples from a stone dropped in water. Cultures hundreds of miles away show clear Olmec influence in their pottery, sculpture, and religious practices. The Maya inherited the Olmec mathematical system, including the concept of zero, one of humanity's greatest intellectual achievements. The long count calendar that the Maya are famous for, it has Olmec roots. The feathered serpent deity that dominated Mesoamerican religion for 2,000 years, it first appears in Olmec art. But around 900 BCE, San Lorenzo was deliberately destroyed. The colossal heads were defaced or buried. The monuments were toppled. What happened? We don't know for sure. Internal revolt, conquest by rivals, environmental disaster? The evidence suggests purposeful destruction, possibly by the Olmec themselves during some kind of political or religious upheaval. Levanta took over as the primary center, thriving until about 400 BCE. Then it too declined, though less violently. The Olmec civilization didn't end with a bang, but gradually transformed and dispersed, its people absorbed into emerging cultures like the Maya. By 400 BCE, the Olmec as a distinct civilization were gone, but their legacy lived on. Every major Mesoamerican civilization that followed, Maya, Zapotec, Teotihuacan, Toltec, Aztec, all build on Olmec foundations. That's why they're called the mother culture.
Even after a century of archaeology, the Olmec still guard their secrets. Who were they? Where did they come from? Some early theories suggested they were immigrants from Africa or Asia, pointing to their distinctive facial features. Modern DNA analysis has debunked this. The Olmec were indigenous Americans, full stop. But that raises another question. How did they develop so quickly? The Olmec seem to appear fully formed, with monumental architecture, complex society, and sophisticated art all emerging around 1200 BCE. Archaeologists now think there were precursor cultures we haven't fully identified yet, smaller settlements and earlier traditions that laid the groundwork. Modern technology is revealing new secrets. LiDAR scanning, using lasers to map terrain through jungle canopy, has discovered previously unknown Olmec sites and structures. Ground-penetrating radar has found buried monuments at known sites. Chemical analysis of pottery residues tells us what they ate and drank. DNA studies are beginning to reveal population movements and relationships between Olmec people and later cultures. One tantalizing mystery: did the Olmec have contact with cultures outside Mesoamerica? Some pottery shows what might be South American influences. Trade goods suggest connections reaching into North America, but the evidence is sparse and hotly debated. The Olmec remind us that civilization isn't a straight line of progress. They achieve remarkable things with primitive technology. They created art that still moved us 3,000 years later. They built an economic and cultural network that shaped an entire continent. And most importantly, they proved that human ingenuity knows no bounds. Give people organization, motivation, and vision, and they'll literally move mountains. Or at least carve faces in them and haul them through 60 miles of jumble.
The Olmec disappeared as a distinct culture over 2,400 years ago. But in a very real sense, they never left. Their fingerprints are all over Mesoamerican history. Every pyramid, every ball court, every carved serpent, every ritual involving blood and sacrifice, all trace back to that humid Gulf Coast heartland where it all began. We'll probably never know everything about the Olmec. We can't read their writing. We don't know their language. Many of their cities remain buried or destroyed. But what we do know is enough to recognize them as one of humanity's great civilizations, the mother culture that gave birth to some of the most remarkable societies the ancient world ever produced. The colossal heads still stare at us across the centuries, silent witnesses to an empire of stone, jade, and mystery. The Olmec built something that lasted not just generations, but millennia. And that might be the greatest monument of all.